sorry, I forgot what to do after that. I just drew a whole fund.
Oh, yeah.
All in favor, we had no discussion, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that carries. Moving on, the 2026 Governance and Personnel Committee meeting schedule. Ms. Backman, any?
Madam Chair, as has been customary for the past, I guess, two or so years, we are proposing to keep the meeting schedule the same. So this committee would meet immediately after shouldn't say immediately, but after the Finance Committee meeting with GPC starting at 6:15 p.m. and ending at 7 p.m. The only exception to this is August, as traditionally the authority nor the committees meet in August. You will see some, if necessary, by some of the meetings, because once we're out of session, this committee and our meeting kind of fall off a bit unless there's a need to reconvene.
Any questions on that at all?
No.
Entertain a motion to approve that. So moved.
Second.
Chair Reed, second by Chair Jefferson, to approve the schedule 2026 and 2027. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Moves us forward to discussion information items on the agenda number 4, the General Assembly update. And Ms. Baynard is here with that wonderful news that you have to share.
Well, it is that time of year again. Our General Assembly convening for a 60-day session on Wednesday. Very exciting. We have at this juncture, we have 15 new members of the House of Delegates as a result of the November election. As you all know, we were having a series of special elections across the Commonwealth that'll bring us another 4 to 5, depending on how things go, of new House members probably by the end of February. But I sort of did this little very quick and dirty schedule of due dates. General Assembly members have to get their budget amendments in by 5 o'clock on Friday. The money committees over the last few years have made it that quick because they have a lot of work and they'll get a lot of amendments. Inauguration, and then they have scheduled, although the Joint Rules Committee has to sign up on it on a Monday meeting, the Governor Spanberger's first joint session of General Assembly is now scheduled for January 19th. And so that's on here. And also it included the dates of the special elections that we know of coming. That's it. The Northern Virginia General Assembly delegation will once again meet Mondays at 5 o'clock, usually for an hour. Their first scheduled meeting actually is the 19th. So I don't know if they'll still have it, given that the governor's joint session is at 4. But the 19th is their first scheduled day. I don't have a time when where they're having the transportation focus meeting, and I'll talk to her chief of staff soon to confirm that. But anyway, those meetings are again every Monday at 5 o'clock at the General Assembly. As you can expect, and you all know this very well because you've heard from your staff and others, it's going to be an extremely busy session. On the one hand, you have the budget and all that entails. Someone said, yeah, sure, we have a lot of money, but there's also a lot of places that money needs to go. And that is going to consume a lot of attention. There's just no two ways to get about that. Both from a local government and a state government perspective, it's just balancing the many competing needs, including, you've got, I was going to say the social services piece of it, particularly in reaction to House Bill 1 from the federal government, the issue of the both process and I think probably technology to stand up and get moving to bring the SNAP error rate down so that we can maximize how much federal matching money there will be for SNAP. So that's going to be a big thing. But then you've got issues around re-benchmarking for K-12. Of course, here that also means a look at cost of competing, whether there's money being thrown that, or at least at some of the spending categories that are really important in Northern Virginia, like English as a second language, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got housing. Everybody across the spectrum and our incoming governor have talked about housing supply increase, affordability of housing. I will say there aren't as many bills introduced at this point as I would like. But we are starting to see at least ideas voiced or actual bills being dropped. So you're gonna see bills around additional money in the housing trust fund. You're gonna see bills related to tweaking the existing sort of a 529 for housing, which actually exists in code but isn't been used. Tweaking of that. There'll be some language around zoning issues, comprehensive plans, incentives for local governments to approve more housing, et cetera. I mean, it's going to be a lot of bills. I just saw a new study bill for Department of Housing and Community Development. So we are going to have and see a lot of discussion around housing. We're going to see a lot of a few bills around, again, workforce development. Some of it being very targeted, whether it's adding more money for community colleges, whose fast forward programs is going really well, but they all have waiting lists for almost every certificate at this point. And so, for them to have more students go through the programs and come out with certificates and get jobs, they need money for faculty, for sometimes even the equipment, and then for some of them, they actually need more space. So there's going to be an ask related to that. I happen to be talking to some folks in the transportation arena, and both from a transit and a commercial trucking perspective, huge need for CDL drivers, and wanting to get fast forward to address that. So we're going to see a bunch of things and workforce. In terms of sort of very specific to what NVTA is interested in and have concerns about, or very interested in, there are a couple of bills I want to bring to your attention. You might remember that Delegate Dolores McQuinn, out of sight of Richmond, she instituted, there was the Transit Modernization and Equity Study, and then out of that became a program called Transit Ridership Incentive Program, TRIP. And when it was created, it was focused on creating a pot of money. So this program gets 6% of the funding out of the Virginia Mass Transit Fund, but that money was to be focused on large urban areas and helping them stand up regional transit service. Anything from the capital and operating, if you wanted to do, I know some of the fare free pilots were funded through TRIP funding. Delegate McQuinn has actually introduced a bill that would now open the program up to anybody, which is all well and good. I don't know, though, if she's also planning on asking for more money for that. Because again, currently it gets 6% for a very specific constituency. You open it up to everybody. Yeah, there's going to be an issue. So that's House Bill 200. And so I've asked some of my transit stakeholders to walk me through. And I just saw it today, so I haven't had a chance to talk with her about the money aspect of it. I mean, I'm all for, and it still will be focused on like helping on the operational and capital side of, regional coordinated service and fare equalization, or fare, looking at fare support for low income people. So all of that would still be there, but you have now exploded the pool of potential grant awardees or applicants anyway. The other one is, as you know, the issue of street safety is really important to all of the members of NVTA and jurisdictions across the Commonwealth. We do expect to see a number of bills around speed enforcement, stop sign enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. Senator Williams Graves has dropped the first version of this. I think NVTA member Delegate Carrie Delaney will have another copy, maybe just be the same thing. This one is a big comprehensive bill because it covers speed cameras, pedestrian crossing violations, stop sign violations, and it provides a single standard for how you determine where to place them, what kind of public notice you have to give, being able to put information on a website and using social media to make sure the general public knows they're out there. As you might recall, last session, the bill got far, but there was a bit of a back and forth but over where the civil penalty funds would go. So Senator Williams Graves' bill says, if a locality is standing it up and their law enforcement folks are doing the certification and enforcement, those civil penalties would be paid to the locality for installation and operations. And then anything over that would have to be used for specific activities related to improving bike ped safety, speed management, and other identified safety initiatives that are in the bill. So it's okay. If it's done through the state police, then over and above what the police need for reimbursement, whatever, anything above that would then go to the Commonwealth Transportation Board to be used for projects that are eligible for the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program. So they've kind of split the baby and have allowed localities to keep the money above what you need for operations, but specify that it continue to be used for especially the safety issues, which kind of makes sense. If you engage a private vendor, there are rules over what can be in that contract. Like you can't use, payment can't be predicated on how many violations are issued or how much money is being raised. So that's the bill in a nutshell. It's trying to standardize all of this. So we'll see how that goes. But I do expect to see variations on this theme also being introduced. So those are the two, again, that have been introduced that I thought it was sort of interesting to make sure, again, they just dropped today and yesterday. So they haven't been around very long, but for folks to start taking a look at. And for us to talk about, where do we, does NVTA as an entity want to chime in on these bills? And then two, what would our message points be? I think for what would be helpful for me is to have you all sort of and your staff take a look at House Bill 200 and let me know within the range of things that it has in it, is there enough there for you as localities to feel comfortable that you could operate under the framework that she's outlined in this version of the bill?
HB 200.
200, HB 200. So that would be really, really helpful. On the TRIP program, again, if you could talk to your transportation departments, while I'm going to circle back around and try to talk to Delegate McQuinn and some others to get a sense of what we think is the fiscal impact of opening this up to the world. I mean, I don't want to be greedy, but
You said right now is 6%.
right now, yes, the TRIP program gets 6% of what goes into the mass transit fund. And that mass transit fund gets so much from Commonwealth Transportation Fund, I can't remember how much, but there's money going to VRE and WMATA and all of your other local bus systems. So the ability to, it'd be interesting to see like where would they find more money to put in it to make those of us who are currently in the program feel comfortable that we're just going to have a lot fewer opportunities to go after grant money. Because I think many members of NVTA have been awarded grants out of the TRIP program since it's been stood up. So those are sort of my questions, like how many of our folks are currently using it and, how have you been using it? And again, what would be the challenge for not having as much capability there in that pot? So there's that. Our partner BPRA has a technical bill when they were stood up, there's just a couple of things they forgot to put into the authorizing language, particularly when it comes to things like eminent domain and quick claim. So they can operate like VDOT, essentially. So there's a bill to fix all that. It's primarily a technical bill for them. It wasn't any, I was looking at it, I didn't see anything that would cause a problem for us per se, but as they are a grantee of NVTA, we do like to make sure they're able to do their work. Because they've got several large projects that impact us on the road. That's kind of what I know right now. Again, the inauguration on the 17th. The governor has been, she wants to come right at the gate and get working. She will be her deadline for bills and budget amendments will be sometime that week of the 19th. I mean, it's sworn in on Saturday and you've got to put stuff in by like Wednesday, the following Wednesday or Thursday. So I think we'll see energy bills. I think we'll see housing bills from her in the first go around.
Data centers.
I don't know if she'll initiate data center bills because there's so many we're gonna see coming from members. It may make more sense for her to let them get the lay of the land and then enter the conversation.
The only tie-in I can see to NVTA would be if they go after the sales tax exemption, have a cataclysmic impact on the budget.
Yeah.
Affect all programs.
Yeah, it'll
The downstream consequences.
expenses of not having that. And we know there's gonna be, as you know, there's gonna be a sales and use tax exemption extension discussion.
Right.
We all know that.
Right.
And there will be metrics tied to that extension. It's just a matter of industry and powers that be coming to a compromise
Sure.
on what those could be. It's doable. I think you can get there. But that's what we're expecting on sales and use tax exemption. So, and I'll stop there. As I said, I wish I had more things to share with you, but things been reduced
Next
yet.
month, there will be a lot.
But that's will be a lot. And so we'll be doing a chart of specific things. I'd like to put them in categories of safety, transportation funding, poverty planning. There'll be some operational issues like around FOIA, these FOIA bills that we as a public body have to pay attention to and see how they impact us. Actually, there is a FOIA bill from Senator Rome that is very specific about defining what fees you can pay, and basically sticking to things like the median wage of the staff preparing it,
Doing
being
it.
able to cap it. But we're gonna see a few more of that. There was we see a lot of FOIA bills. So those are becoming, and of course, we look for anyone wanting to either A, change our money, but more likely, we've been seeing folks who want to sort of predicate that we have to spend a certain amount of money in some way. Hopefully, we will not see any of those bills, but we definitely look for those. We keep our flexibility, keep our money and our flexibility. On the transit front, I'm sorry, I don't know why I didn't talk about that. We are still expecting to have the conversation about transit. Delegate Sickles is going to hand over his version of the bill. So in case you haven't heard, as you know, between SJ 28 and DMV moves, the concept is still define predictable, sustainable, bondable operation and capital funding from Northern Virginia for Northern Virginia that can be used for all of our entire transit ecosystem, from WMATA to VRE to PRTC to your local systems. That is the goal. That would be the big goal. There was a version of this discussion that actually looks at a statewide transit funding increase that might also provide funding for maybe like I-81 corridor, et cetera. That would be great. If that's not possible, then there would be a more focused Northern Virginia piece. The one thing that actually has to get done in this fiscal year is we need $153 million on the operating side for Virginia's subsidy to WMATA to re-benchmark, because the 3% subsidy increase cap, or 3% cap on subsidy increases, kicks back in FY27. And so we want it to kick back in when we have the right baseline. That's $153 million. So that's sort of the least that might happen. And the big one would be finding statewide money. There are a lot of parts of the Commonwealth who use transit who are concerned that the funding that goes into the mass transit fund is not keeping up with inflation and needs of both operating and capital. We really saw that kind of blow up during the discussion on reforming merit. And that has been delayed from the Commonwealth Transportation Board. They're going to spend between now and April continuing to talk to stakeholders to try to get more closure. But a lot of that challenge has been the pot hasn't gotten any bigger, even though the needs have gotten bigger. And so any change you may make means there's winners and losers of some size, and sort of trying to get through that. So, but again, the finding additional revenue and how that is done and how that intersects with the very broad discussion and very broad campaign issue of affordability is gonna be the issue. And how that all gets worked out. And I think at this point, it's very early days, and I think it's, you know, we'll see at crossover, I think if that does get worked out or with what the various pieces are. And the administration will have some thoughts, Senate will have some thoughts, and the House will have some thoughts. And then we'll have to get worked out. So, any other questions? So I said, I don't have a lot to tell you from a transportation perspective, but it's a lot of conference.
I have, so Ms. Brainerd, with the transit funding,
Yes,
so the 153,
yes.
and then there's, what was it, 400 and?
It's about 450 is the joint operating capital for all of our systems.
And not to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think Maryland has stated that they don't.
For the WMATA side,
For
yeah.
the WMATA side, they won't have, or it's going to be a hard sell for them to have money
Yeah.
for fiscal year 27.
Yes, that is
Do
correct.
we know what that means for us?
Not yet. That is going to be part of the discussion. Because in the past, we've had these discussions, and we saw this in 2018 regarding the capital fund, state of good repair. It was the discussion in Virginia during our General Assembly session, which while starts the same day as Maryland, moves much faster to theirs. I mean, we're like halfway through before they do anything serious, just because they go 90 days. The question, particularly from people outside of the region, was always asked, well, what are Maryland and DC doing? Are they going to do their part? Like, you're not giving money if they're not. And so that is another piece of how does timing work? Do we do a delayed enactment? Do we just not do it until 27? I don't know, but that is absolutely going to be part of the discussion for the net new money, for sure.
Now, this is an unfair question. Do you think there's a possibility that, and I don't think it's a matter of if, but when the Commonwealth comes together and we get the money for transit in general, WMATA specifically, that it comes from statewide, or is it NOVA, or maybe a combination thereof?
I think we go into it wanting it to be a combination. Because again, the state provides money for our transit systems now. They provide almost 50% of money for WMATA, so that shouldn't necessarily change. It's just that the way to get state money is convincing people who don't live here. As opposed to us, once again, doing it for ourselves. So that absolutely has to be, I mean, that is why having a statewide discussion that takes into account the needs that other people have. And hopefully they're like, yeah, I can see myself doing that. That makes a lot of sense. So then that's the statewide portion. And then we may have a Northern Virginia portion, which like we do for NVTA or whatever. That might be. So I think at this point, everything is going to have to be on the table, and we just got to see where we end up. And if we're heading in a direction that actually makes sense. And can we get there, or do we have to retrench and figure out a short term and come back again in a year? And again, it doesn't help that we're saying like, Northern Virginia has the fewest federal jobs we've ever had. I mean, those discussions are not great because, again, the lack of tax revenue coming out of Northern Virginia is starting to show up in the budget, which impacts everything else. And so then it becomes the question of what do we do to help Northern Virginia, hopefully? Is that seen as the primary way to help us, or is it something else? Because Northern Virginia has to get economically healthier as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's going to be a very uncomfortable 4 years for the General Assembly and the incoming governor.
Thanks.
And
on that note.
So more to come. As I said, we'll be sending missives to you all As bills come in, if you're comfortable with it, we'll work with NVTA to send them to you all directly. I mean, again, you all have staff who are looking at these things, but because I'm gonna be specifically focused around transportation, really things that hit our regional impacts, our regional priorities, which are protecting our money, protecting our flexibility, transit funding, really our three priorities. We will focus on that and we need to have a discussion about working with our other stakeholders, how to move forward on those things. But definitely on the trip piece, I'd really love to have your folks let me know. And if you want them to call me or email me directly, that's fine. Did not anticipate that coming up. Like, wait. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Boehner. Appreciate that. We don't have closed session. So if nothing else, a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. I know there's no discussion. All in favor, say aye.